Okay, we are on live. So, my friends out there, please like and share and join the conversation at Light Me Up. Also, tonight's class, nightly sponsors, in honor of the people that work so hard to keep the Lighthouse Project running week in and week out, dedicated anonymously, and for the Refuah Shlema of Menachem Mendel ben Sora Batya and the Vora Fega Bat Rezel. And I would like to add on a Refuah Shlema for my father, Yehuda Arya Hakoyen ben Gittel. Can I bother you to close the door? It's a little noisy for me. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, tonight's class called Restoring the Omnipotent Name of God Within Us. So what's the issue we're going to talk about today? The modern day issue we're going to talk about today is making a deal with the devil. We're all familiar with the term, making a deal with the devil. What exactly does this mean? You're familiar with the term? Making a deal with the devil? Okay. So what does the devil want from the deal, and what do we pay for making this deal with the devil? This question, in a certain dimension, will answer what Pharaoh wanted from the Jewish people and what so many other kings and kingdoms who, anti-Semitic, what did they want from us? I want to just share that there's two types of anti-Semites in the history of the Jewish people. There's one anti-Semite, which is Haman. He didn't want anything from us. He just wanted to obliterate us. Hitler, Amalek. That's one special dynasty of anti-Semitism. They want nothing from us. They don't want to rob us, they don't want to rape us, they don't want to make us slaves, they want to obliterate us. But that's not what Pharaoh wanted. There's a story of Pharaoh. What Pharaoh wanted was that we should be alive and we should be serving him. And we've had those anti-Semites in history too. So on one hand, the verse in last week's Torah portion says, Vayakutsu, and we were like thorns in their eyes. They hated us, but they didn't want us dead. They want us to be the ultimate servant, subordinate to them. So the question is, why? What is that? You know, Pharaoh was the leader of civilized world at that time. Why the Jewish people? Why do you want us specifically to be his ultimate slaves? There were other people there, other slaves there. Why was the focus on the Jewish people? Okay, so that's one thing. So what do we have here in the modern day issue is two issues. Number one, what happens when we make a deal with the devil and how to get back our soul from the devil? That's one issue. And B, what lies behind anti-Semitism of the Pharaohian style? Not to kill you, we want you to be slaves, but specifically you, and no one else but you, to be our slaves. Shalom, come on in.
Shalom,
Erev Tov. Okay, so that's the modern day issue. And really, to understand what the Pharaoh wanted and why certain nations wanted us to be there and to be their slaves, come on in, Shalom, is one issue. But the main issue I really want to talk about in our day-to-day life is we all make deals with the devil. We may not realize it, but we all make deals with the devil. And we're going to explain that today. Okay? Okay, so let's go ahead. A little introduction. In this week's Torah portion, there's a verse. I'm going to read to you the verse. It's right in the onset. It's the fifth verse of our Torah portion. And it reads as follows. Therefore, say to the children of Israel, I am God, and I will take you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will save you from their labor, and I will redeem you from an outstretched arm, and with great judgments, and I will take you to me as a people. So you've heard, one of the most famous things about this verse is that you just heard 4 different terminologies of redemption, from which we learn out that by the Seder you drink 4 cups of wine. Okay? So let's go over them. Number 1, v'hotzeti, and I will take you out. Number 2, v'hitzalti, and I will save you. Number 3, v'goalti, and I will redeem you. And number 4, v'lakachti, and I will take you. Nothing to do with this class, but then there's another term which the rabbis argue over. And that is the 5th one, v'haveti, and I will bring you. And we do the cup of Elijah to cover all bases. So on one hand, the Haveti everyone agrees, is talking about, and I will bring you when Mashiach comes. Elijah is connected with Mashiach. He announces the arrival of Mashiach. It's the cup of Elijah. But what everyone agrees is that these four terminologies that we just quoted, they manifest themselves in our Seder table in the 4 cups of wine. And that's why we have 4 cups of wine. Okay? So, let's talk about this. There are different opinions. One opinion is that all 4 terminologies of redemption is specifically about the exodus of Egypt, because Pharaoh made 4 horrible decrees. So the Talmud says, the Medrash says, that the 4 languages of redemption is from the 4 decrees of Pharaoh. There's another opinion that says that no, it has to do with the 4 exiles. Besides, we are taught that besides the exile of Egypt, the Jewish people were going to go through 4 more exiles. What are the 4 exiles? There was the exile of Babylon. There's the exile of Persia and Media. You know the story of Purim. There was the exile of Greek, story of Hanukkah. And then there's the Roman exile. And by the way, today we are still considered in the Roman exile. The destruction of the Second Temple, and we're still in that exile. Okay? So that means that from the 4th one, if we say that one of the 4 terms of redemption refers to the 4th one, we're not only talking about past exiles and past exodus, we're talking about the final redemption is included here. Okay? So I just want to give you a brief. I don't want to get caught up with this. I just want to share with you briefly, okay? The redemption of Egypt was complete. The redemption of Mashiach will be complete. The redemption in between were never totally complete. All of them we were, there's a saying about Persia. Akati, Abdi Achashverosh, were still servants of Achashverosh. It wasn't like we were ever really freed. Through Esther, he was okay with rebuilding the Second Temple. Who his son was his son a good person, a bad person, Daryosh, old stories, okay? When we talk about the concept of Exodus and the concept of exile, reverse order, exile and Exodus, we say that Egypt is the protocol of any exile a Jew goes through. The very word Egypt in Hebrew, Mitzrayim, is mitzarim, constraints. The definition of redemption, every redemption that ever takes place, all comes from the redemption of Egypt. Even concerning the final redemption, what do we say? Kimei tzeitcha eretz Mitzrayim arena neflaot. We compare it, the wonders, to the wonders that took place in the times of Egypt, the exodus of Egypt. That's the way we'll have. So everything is connected there. Thus it makes sense that in the story of Egypt, we're finding the hints to all future exiles and future redemptions. Because this is the gateway that opened up the concept of exile, the gateway that opened up the concept of redemption, exodus, and therefore everything is already included within it. Thus it makes sense. Now, even concerning the 4 cups of wine, there are different opinions. The Zohar talks about an opinion that the first 2 cups of wine is about Egypt. The second 2 cups of wine is about the final redemption. Then there's an opinion that no, you should know that after the blessing of the Kriyat Shema, when we say in the morning prayers, what do we do after that? We do the blessing of Shema. In between the Shema and the Amidah is the after blessing of the Shema. Biblically, we only have to say the Shema. The sages introduce pre-blessings and post-blessing. In the post-blessing, what are the first words you say? Emet v'yatziv. True and established. If you look in that paragraph, you're going to find 4 times the word emet. Right? What's the second paragraph after that? The same blessing, Ezrat Avotenu. Familiar with that? The help of our father, right? In that paragraph, again you'll find 4 times emet.
But it's the help and the domain.
Yes, emet. So the point that I'm just trying to make here is that we're pointing out that there's 4 times emet in the first paragraph, 4 times emet in the second paragraph. In the Zohar, we have an opinion that the first 4 emets refer to the first 4 cups of wine, which means the way they manifest themselves in the Exodus of Egypt. This is according to the opinion that says that the 4 words of redemption that we just read in the verse are all talking about the 4 terrible decrees in Egypt. The second 4 emet, right? In the second paragraph, Ezrat Avotenu, what do we say over there? Those are the 4 emets that refer to the 4 cups of wine as they are referring to the final redemption. So now we have a whole new opinion. It's not the opinion is 4 of Egypt or all 4 exiles afterwards. Now we have an opinion that it's all 4 refer to the final redemption. Okay? Now, so far so good? Okay, let's go further then. What is going on here? Emet Havaya, truth is God. So simply speaking, what are we saying? God is true. No. And Kabbalah gets deeper than that. Which name do we use? The Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey. The ineffable tetragrammaton. I like using that word because it sounds so intelligent, but you should just know tetra means 4, so it's a 4-lettered name. Ineffable means we can't pronounce it. So the ineffable tetragrammaton is the name of God, the Yud, Hey, and the Vav, Hey. Right? That is the notion of Emet. How do you know that's the notion of Emet? Because in the opening Torah portion, what does God tell Moses? I revealed myself to the forefathers with the name Kel Shakai. To you I am revealing myself with the name, the ineffable tetragrammaton. What does Rashi say? What does that mean? God appeared to Abraham. By the way, a total different question. By the Brit Milah, he clearly used the ineffable tetragrammaton. So why is he saying he didn't? Discussed in Chassidus, a different class. But just for today, I want to point out what Rashi says. Rashi says that what God is telling Moses is, I never showed the forefathers my truthfulness. What is the definition of truthfulness? I said and I did. To them I only said and I never did. They had to have faith in me. You, I'm going to show my name of truth. Thus we now know that the ineffable tetragrammaton is the concept of truth. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about what does it mean. When we talk about exile, what does it mean exile? The definition of exile is sin. What is the definition of sin? It means that I took God into exile. Once I take God into exile, I now understand that it's going to manifest itself physically for me. What does those words mean, I took God into exile? So it comes from a verse where God says, I am with you in your trouble. And when it says about redemption, it doesn't say God will bring us back. It says God will come with us back. We know that God is with us in our exile. Let's talk about it just a little bit more carefully. I want to share with you what is the punishment for sin in the Torah. One of the famous punishments is 39 lashes. Did you ever ask yourself why 39? 40 minus 1. But why 39? So I want to share with you a little bit of mysticism. God's name is spelled Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Okay? Now, that equals 26. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, Hey is 5. Now let me show you another way of counting it. In Kabbalah, when we play the numerology game, sometimes we don't count a letter the way it is, but we count it the way it sounds. If I tell you the letter Yud, Yud is Yud Vav Dalet. Yud. Hey is Hey Aleph. Vav is Vav Aleph Vav. Hey again is Hey Aleph. Now let's start counting. Yud Vav Dalet equals 20. We go to Hey Aleph equals 6. 26. How much is Vav? 13. Vav 6, Aleph 1, Vav 6. How much is 26 and 13? 39. So the first 3 letters equal 39. What are the first 3 letters giving us lashes for? Because we took away the letter Hey. Why do we take away the letter Hey? So let's go back a little bit. Why did Pharaoh want us to be his slaves? Could have had any slaves in the world. He could have taken other people. Why mess with the one people that saved him? Joseph. Jacob took away 5 years of hunger. It was supposed to be 7 years. He came down in the 2nd year. He blessed Pharaoh and the hunger was over. Why mess with them? To understand this, we need to understand a very basic Kabbalistic concept of what is a mitzvah, what is an Avera, what is kosher, and what is not kosher. We talk about two types of life forces. There's a life force which is given to us face to face. There's the life force which is given to us back to back. What is the difference between the two? What is the word in Hebrew for face?
Panim.
Panim. Those who speak Yiddish, Ashay Napunim. Right? What does the word panim mean? Face. Give me another meaning to the word panim. Inside. So that means there's the internal and there's the external. What is the difference between internal and external in spirituality? Internal is essence. External is expression. What's the difference between essence and expression? Expression, by definition, is only finite. As much as great artists wanted to rip out a piece of their heart, soul, and mind and put it on canvas, the minute you start talking, you've left essence and gone to expression. Expression is finite. Essence is infinite. Face-to-face means that there is an infinite transmission of life force. I am not giving you of what I have, I am giving you me. External expression means I'm not giving you me, I'm giving you of what I have to offer. Very different. Okay? You ask any child, they'll tell you without even learning any Kabbalah what the difference is. Dad, I don't want your credit card, I want you. Very different. Okay? Let's go further then. This has to do with another Kabbalistic concept. Internal will, external will. What's the difference in the two? External will means I don't want you. I want something that I get through you. That's an external will. I don't want a person, place, a thing because I want it. I want what this it brings to me. What is internal will? Internal will means I want you because I want you. What is evil doing? If everything comes from God and God is everything, and everything that exists gets from the life force of God, thus we say that evil is only from God, but it's a back-to-back relationship, not a face-to-face relationship. Why does God have evil at all? And the answer is God doesn't want evil. God wants what only evil can give him. And what is that? Creatures that have freedom of choice. If I can't tell God no, then I can't choose to tell him yes. So evil by definition is an external will. God doesn't want evil. God wants what evil offers to his children. Remember, what makes us precious to God is that we can freely choose to not be in a relationship, and we choose to be in a relationship. Angels are not precious to God because angels don't have a Yetzirah. They live in the domain of purity. So therefore, what does evil know about itself? Evil knows about itself, God doesn't want me for me. God wants me for what I have to offer. Thus, evil knows it is the external will. Thus, evil knows it's a back-to-back relationship. Thus, evil will always feel lacking. Just like what we all feel when we're in a relationship, when we have everything from the other person, but the other person. Evil feels that lacking. Because it feels that lacking, what's it yearning for? It's yearning for a face-to-face connection. But evil can't have a face-to-face connection. Because evil is the external will, not the internal will. Thus, what's the only way that evil can ever get anything of face-to-face? through the Jew. Thus the evil wants the Jew to be subordinate to him. Why? Because when the Jew is the ultimate slave to evil, then everything the Jew gets is through evil. Thus evil now has a part and parcel of the Jewish relationship with God. The face-to-face relationship with God. Now that we understand that, we understand why Pharaoh, who could have had millions of slaves, wanted the Jew as a slave. And why was the Jew so painful to Pharaoh? Because when there is a face-to-face relationship, it makes back-to-back relationship come to terms with its lacking so much deeper. And I shouldn't say come to terms, come to face. It's back-to-back relationship. Now we understand why evil consistently wants us. Evil consistently wants us because it wants to make a hole in the pipe. On the outside of the pipe, everything is what? Everything is external, back-to-back. Where does face-to-face flow? In the pipe. And therefore, unless evil can drill a hole in the pipe, it will never get face-to-face sustenance. What's the only way to drill a hole in the pipe? Is to get a Jew to sin. To get a Jew to become subordinate to evil. And thus then, this Jew now creates that was meant to go only face-to-face into an internal will, is now being taken into exile, forced to sustain external will. That's what evil wants from the deal. That's what the devil wants from us. What is the devil willing to pay us for this? External abundance. Now you tell me, why do we all sell our soul to the devil? It isn't so that we can understand the Tosfos any better. It's because of external abundance. I want fame, power, wealth, beauty, pleasure. That's what I want. What is all of that? External abundance. What does the devil tell me? I got what you want. You have what I want. Let's make a deal. The price we pay for it is a fractured soul. What does it mean, a fractured soul? On the most simplest level, the last letter of God's name, Hey, represents Shekhinah. What does Shekhinah mean? Shekhinah means God, but that's not really what it means. What it means is presence. Shochein ad, he rests. Why is the Hey called Shekhinah? Because that is the level of God's name that rests within us. Kabbalistic terminology, that's the 10th emanation called Malchut. The 10th emanation refers to the garments, the outside. That's what comes down into us. So therefore, even though we have 5 levels to a soul, right? We have the Yechida, the Chaya, the Nev, the Neshama, the Ruach, the Nefesh. We spoke about it, we'll speak about it, but not this class. The point I'm trying to make is, that which literally sustains my being is what? That which literally sustains my being. I'd like to interrupt this broadcast because I saw on LinkedIn that Rabbi Wolf gets a Mazel Tov for 7 years, I believe, right? God bless you. Mazel Tov. My friends, this is the Rabbi of Beth David. Give him a Mazel Tov.
Hi everybody, Mazel Tov.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, let's go further. So what happens now? What happens is that the letter Hey lies within me. When I sin, do you know the words that Alter Rebbe uses in Tanya? What a Jew does when he sins? He says he has the king's head in a headlock and drags him into the dung. Why? The example is perfect. Because I'm alive, I'm not sinning when I'm dead. If I'm alive, that means the Hey is within me. With that life force, what am I doing now? I'm sinning. Thus, what does that mean? Ultimately, the Hey within me is sustaining sin. Thus I've grabbed a letter of God's name, my godly soul, and I've paused it. Instead of to only give sustenance, face-to-face sustenance, internal relationship, essence, it should only go to where it belongs, purity. I forced it to now go in exile and feed the devil. Okay? So far, so good? Everyone happy now? Everyone's smiling? now that we know what kind of great things we do when we sin. But by the way, the biggest thing I want to talk about today is what happens to us. We get fractured when we do that. We get fractured. And when our soul gets fractured, we're in a sense of lack of peace, lack of fulfillment. There's a black hole that we can never fill. Not with another sin, not with another $1 million, not with another glorious moment. We can't. We can never fill a black hole of internal with external. It just won't work. Now let's talk about teshuvah. The word teshuvah means returning repentance. But what does the word teshuvah really mean? In Kabbalah, quoted in Tanya, the word teshuvah is toshuv hay, return the hay. Now you know what teshuvah is all about. The first Yud Hey Vav is giving you 39 lashes, screaming, hey, bring our buddy back here. That's what teshuvah is. Toshuv hay, bring back the hay. Now that we know that, we can start focusing on what it means. So let's move forward. 4 cups of wine, 4 terminologies of redemption. We now know that what is redemption? Exile means that I took God into exile, and that manifests itself in my life in a fractured soul, spiritual exile, in a physical exile. What is redemption? Redemption is freeing that, returning the hay. So now I know redemption and teshuvah are synonymous. If I do teshuvah and I bring back the hay, I've redeemed myself spiritually, I will be redeemed physically. And thus, the Rambam says in the Laws of Teshuvah, chapter 5, what does he say there? Chapter 7? Law 5. Whatever, it's here. So what does the Rambam say? The Rambam says, oh my God, I don't know what I drank before I came here. Chapter 7, Law 5. It says, En Yisrael Nigalin. The children of Israel will not be redeemed, Ella b'teshuvah. Only through teshuvah. Now we understand why. It's not because God says, give me what I want and I'll give you what you want. God says, you make it possible. Teshuvah, bring back the hay. And we're no more in exile. This will manifest itself physically. Now that we know this, in other words, what am I saying to you? What I'm saying to you is that the 4 terminologies of redemption really is 4 terminologies of teshuvah. Thus I know that we have 4 levels of teshuvah. 1 second, it gets more interesting than that. We said that there's really 8 times emet. There's the 4 in the beginning of the blessing, and there's the 4 in the end of the blessing, which now means really that we don't have 4 levels of teshuvah, we have 8 levels of teshuvah. We have 4 that belongs to redemption up to present, and then we have the 4 that belongs to redemption when Mashiach comes. The 4 cups of wine and the 4 cups of wine. Okay? So now we need to understand what these 4 levels of teshuvah is. And then we understand that once we understand the 4 levels of teshuvah, we have to see how these 4 levels of teshuvah reflect itself in 2 dimensions. The dimension of teshuvah, which comes from the exodus of Egypt, and the dimension of teshuvah that's going to be when Mashiach comes. By the way, you should just know one of the greatest teachings about Mashiach is also he's going to come to bring tzadikaya l'tiyufta. He's going to come to bring tzadikim the gift of teshuvah. Now we understand why. Because that is the ultimate power of redemption. Teshuvah, toshuv hay. Return the hay. And we're going to talk about some 4 levels. So far, so good? You with me?
I'm with you.
Okay.
You got my head spinning, but I'm with you.
Job accomplished. I can stop. Let's go further. There's a language, it's mentioned both in the beginning of Tractate Shabbat and Talmud. It's also mentioned in Shavuot, in the laws of oath. There's a language that says, Shtayim Shehem Arba. Right? You remember your first Mishnah? It talks about the different ways of carrying. There's 2 that's 4. The rich man outside, the inside, and the poor man inside, right? I want to borrow that terminology. Because the 4 levels of Teshuvah are really 2 which are 4. Why are they 2 which are 4? Because the word we said Teshuvah means Tashuv Hay, bring back the hay. And in bringing back the hay, when I want to bring together 2 things, from top and from bottom, there's 2 parts of it. Bring the bottom up and bring the top down. Thus in Kabbalah and Hasidus, you always hear the terminology milmata lemala, from below to above, milmala lemata, from above to below. So those are 2 directions that create a total teshuvah.
And that's the unity.
Yes. Now we have another thing. We have something in Kabbalah called tshuva ilah and tshuva tata. Higher teshuvah and lower teshuvah. How is that possible? Very simple. The word teshuvah is tashuv hay, return the hay. How many hays are there in God's name? 2. Yud, hay, vav, hay. Thus, teshuvah ila'ah, the higher teshuvah, is bring back the first hay to the yud. The second level of teshuvah, which is called the lower teshuvah, is bring back the second hay to the vav. Thus, I now know that teshuvah is 2, which is 4. There's 2 in bringing the first hay to the yud, which means bring the hay to the yud, bring the yud to the hay. There's 2 in the second level of teshuvah, which is bring the second hay to the vav, bring the second vav to the hay. Okay? Just to really make Phyllis's head turn, remember that this now doubles. Because this is all concerning the name of God, as we talk about it with the redemption of Egypt. Then we have to go over the whole 4 again by the final redemption. Okay.
So we're looking at 16.
No, 4 and 4.
No, but 12.
2 which is 4 by Egypt, 2 which is 4 by the final redemption.
But it's 4 times 4.
No, it's 2 times. It's 2 which is 4.
2 plus 2.
In other words, there's 2 to bring the first hay back.
That's easy.
2 which is to bring the second hay back. That's a complete set.
That's the one.
That's the 4. Now there's 2 of those sets. One talking about with Egypt, one talking about with the final redemption.
The 2 sets are related.
We'll talk about that later. But simply speaking, there's 2 sets of 4. Okay? Mm-hmm. What are these 2 sets of 4? So let's start. Let's start with the lower teshuvah. What is the lower teshuvah? The lower teshuvah is to bring the hay to the vav and the vav to the hay. The latter 2 letters of God's name. What is the hay? The hay is kingship. Right? We mentioned that before. The 4 letters of God's name is the 10 emanations. Right? So the hay, the last hay is kingship. What does it mean bring back the hay? Return kingship. What does it mean return kingship? What it means is the first paragraph of the Shema. Hear, O Israel, God is our God. God is one. Simply speaking, accept upon yourself the sovereignty of God. Sinning means I'm not accepting God's sovereignty. Let's quote again what Pharaoh said last week to Moses. Who is God that I should listen to him? So the first thing is, before you start doing mitzvot, first accept God. If you don't have God, you don't have mitzvot. You have a bunch of self-help books, but you don't have mitzvot. Mitzvot means that the commander commanded me. If I have no commander, I have no commandments. I just have self-perfection, which has nothing what to do with religion, nothing what to do with spirituality. So when we talk about the first thing in Shema, hear, O Israel, God is our God, God is one. Accept God as your king. Hay is kingship. Returning the hay means I'm accepting upon myself that God is in charge. Language of recovery. He is the director. He is the father. He's the one that's in charge. We're his agents and we're his children. Number 1, he's the king. Now that we know that that means hay, return the hay, we now know that that simply is the first and lower level of fear. When it says Yirat Shamayim, have fear of heaven, it simply means that I should know, right now I'm thinking of sinning. I'm alone and no one sees me. Not true. My king is present. One of the famous stories they told us when we were kids, which came from Rabbi Goldstein's records of blessed memory, was the guy that was driving and he was starving. He was driving the wagon. He had someone in his wagon. He said, come, right there is the king's courtyard. Every time I pass here, I try to steal fruits, but I need someone to watch, to tell me if the king's looking. So the guy says, I'm sorry, I'm not participating. He says, don't, come on, be a mensch. You don't have to do anything, but at least tell me. Don't let me get caught. Okay. As the guy starts climbing the fence, the other guy in the carriage says, the king is watching, the king is watching. The guy jumps down the fence, runs back into the thing, hits his horses, he's flying. He sees no one's chasing him. He says, were you joking with me? He said, no, I wasn't. The king is watching. If we can just bear that in mind and always have the fear that I'm not alone, God is watching me. I know today fear is a taboo, but not in the Torah. Healthy fear is not a taboo. Healthy fear is the reason why half of us aren't robbing, stealing. We all love to say that we're very high moral people. But the reason why we don't do what we're not supposed to do primarily is because we're afraid of getting caught. The reason why my kid doesn't run into the street is because he's afraid. There's a healthy fear which keeps us alive. The lower fear. That is returning to hay, lower fear. What does that mean? Accept God as His sovereignty and know that God is always examining your mind and your heart. That's bringing the yud up, the hay up to the vav. What is the vav? If you look at the vav, what is a vav really? A vav is really a yud with a line coming down. That means that we're drawing down divinity. What does that mean? That's the second portion of Shema. What's the second portion of Shema? V'hayim shemoah tishmu el mitzvotai. You accepted my sovereignty. Now I can give you commandments and you accept my commandments. What is the definition of accepting commandments? That is the experience of lower love. Why? Because the whole relationship we have with commandments of God is that we come to learn and appreciate that living the life of God, the ways of God, is living the good life. I wrote, and I put out these daily memes on my Instagram, which relates to the Parasha. One of the things I did over there was, I wrote, certainty is the gift for he who walks in the ways of God. Otherwise, there is no certainty. So knowing that when I'm walking in the ways of God, I'm doing His mitzvot, I'm doing the right thing, that's a gift of love, lower love. It's about me living a life that's no more insecure. 99.9% of our generation lives in the pangs of insecurity. When you're walking in the ways of God, you're walking in the ways of security. You don't feel insecure. Thus, that is the lower love. When you live that type of life, you're bringing the vav to the hay. That is called lower teshuvah. Why is it lower teshuvah? Because it's the lower unity. It's the second half of God's name. That second hay, the first vav. Step number 1, accept God as your king. Lower fear of heaven. That step number 2, accept His commandments because living the way of God is beautiful. That's lower love. Bring them together, you're doing teshuvah. Simple teshuvah over sins. Okay? That's the lowest level of how you take your soul back to the devil. Back from the devil. The minute I say God is my king, so the devil's not my king. I'm taking back my soul. Okay, but that's an abstract statement. No. I'm living the ways of God. Now I've really taken back my soul. Let's talk about the higher teshuvah. The higher teshuvah is what? Is about the first two letters, the yud and the hey. Okay? Let's talk about what the yud and the hey means. So first I want to share with you a verse that says in chapter 34 of Tehillim, verse number 15. We say it in our Shabbat prayers. Sur mera va'aseh tov, bake shalom v'ratfehu. Sur mera, turn away from evil. Va'aseh tov, and do good. Bake shalom, Research for peace and pursue it. Which is the first lower level of teshuvah? Sur merah. The minute I'm saying I'm accepting God as my king, what I'm really saying is I'm not going to rebel against him no more. Turn away from bad. When you're doing mitzvot, what are you doing? The second stage of the verse. Aseh tov. Now let's go to the next part. That means that what's the higher teshuvah? Bakesh shalom. Search for good, for peace, shalom, peace, and pursue it. So we have a statement that we're taught in our sages in Tractate Sanhedrin, page 99b. What does it say there? It says over there that he who studies Torah for Torah's sake, not for self-grandiose, he who studies Torah for Torah's sake brings peace bepamalia shel mailo ubepamalia shel mata. The family above, the upper family, and the lower family. Let's not get too mystical. The upper family is the angels, and the lower family is mankind. Why do we need to bring peace between the upper angels? We know why. What does Shamayim mean? Heaven. What is the word Shamayim made out of? Esh umayim, fire and water. Who are these two? This is the archangel Michael, water, and the archangel Gabriel. However, by themselves, they can never join forces to create a peaceful heaven. Fire and water do not get along. Water extinguishes fire, and fire evaporates water. Thus, we need to have peace up there. And then we have to have peace down here. Why we need to have peace down here, we don't really have to discuss too much. We know that. That's not mystical. So let's talk about it. To understand how Torah brings peace in the family above and the family below, we have to talk about a statement about Torah that it says in the Zohar. In volume 2 of the Zohar, it says as follows. Araita, it's not just there, it's in other places too, but you have over there, it says, Araita mechachma nafkit. Araita Torah, mechachma from wisdom, nafkit comes out. But you know that in Kabbalah everything is so perfect. So why does it use the word mechachma from wisdom, nafkit comes out? It should just say that Torah is God's wisdom. No, Torah from wisdom comes out. Thus we extrapolate from here in the world of mysticism two things. Number one, you should know that the Torah only comes out from wisdom. But where does it clothe itself that we can actually study it, understand it, and decipher it is in understanding. Not in wisdom, chachma, but in bina. It comes from chachma into bina. By the way, for those of you who really love Kabbalah, it's also what it means when it says in Genesis, and the water came out of Eden, right? The river came out of Eden to irrigate the garden. Garden is what? Gan. What is Gan? 53. How many Torah portions are there? There's 53 Torah portions. Thus we're taught that the garden represents, according to one teaching, garden represents the understanding, and the water comes out from above, from wisdom, which is beyond our understanding, and irrigates the garden. So the first thing we understand is, where is Torah? Torah for us, where do we study it? Where do we relate to it? Is in understanding, bina, not in chachma. But on the other hand, there's another extrapolation. If you really want to be very careful with the Kabbalistic words, when it says that Torah comes out of wisdom, right? From wisdom comes forth, we now know that Torah's source is not wisdom. Wisdom is only the pipe through which it comes. So where does Torah come from? The answer is the supernal crown, Keter. So in the very same teaching in Zohar, we have two opposite concepts. Number one, the Torah for us, where we relate to it, where we engage, is not wisdom. It's lower, it's understanding. And on the other hand, we learned out, but you should know that Torah itself doesn't really come from wisdom. It comes through wisdom. So where does it come from? It comes from the supernal crown. Now we'll understand the first two letters. I told you that Hey is kingship. Vav is 6. That's the 6 male emotions. So what is the Yud and the Hey? The Yud and the Hey is understanding and correct. And Yud is wisdom. What does it mean? Understanding is 3-dimensional. What is 3 dimensions? Length, width, and depth. In the world of intellect, they all exist. The width of the concept is understanding all the details. The length of the concept is to be able to bring it down another level. The depth of the concept is where you split hairs. It gets, instead of clothing into examples, you're shedding it, making it more abstract, more divine. That is Bina that has 3 lines. Hey. Now you have the Yud. What is the Yud? The Yud is the dot. Wisdom. The flash. Now you understand that the Torah can be learned on 2 levels. So when we say pursue peace, we say first search peace and pursue it, and peace means Torah, it's because there's 2 levels on which to study Torah. What is the difference if you study Torah on the level of understanding or on the level of wisdom? Very simple. Understanding means I'm rolling up my sleeves and I am engaging my intellectual capacities, my human, egocentric, intellectual capacities. The person who thinks they're stupid and the person who thinks that I don't have what it takes truly doesn't. As Ford said, if you think you're going to fail or you think you're going to prosper, you're right. So it takes, the Bina has a touch of arrogance. I have a head and I'm going to study God's Torah. And how do I study it? I want to conquer it. I want to understand it. I want to dissect it. I want to control it. I want to make it mine. That I truly wake me up in the middle of the night and I'll give you the answer. Ask me a question that isn't exactly what we learned. I own it enough to extrapolate. You should know a rule. If you don't truly own the Torah knowledge, you can only repeat it in the exact words of your teacher. When you truly own it, you can then play with it. You can explain it from different angles because you own it. That is Bina. Understanding. That is the Hey. What is the Yud? The Yud is the dot. Do you know the difference between the word Kabbalah and Talmud? Talmud means to learn. Kabbalah means to receive. What is the difference? The difference is in the world of understanding, I am engaging, I am learning. In the world of Chachma, there's absolute humility. Because all I'm doing is loosening the grip of my arrogant intellectual faculties, trying to open up to accept a drop of infinite creativity. The difference between the Yud and the Hey. Now, to understand this, what is the power of the Hey? Bina in Kabbalah is called the mother of emotions. Right? Look at the difference between a child's emotions and an adult's emotions. One is chaos and one hopefully is peaceful. Thus you understand that when you engage with the Hey, the first Hey, I'm understanding Torah, my emotions are no more chaotic. Thus, that when you study the Torah on the level of Hey, you're bringing peace to the family below. When you're studying Torah on the level of Yud, humility, so that wisdom can open up to receive supernal crown, you're bringing peace above. You're bringing the all-encompassing light. And in front of the king, all ministers become one. There is no antithesis. Because this is the king's minister and this is the king's minister. Fire and water can get along. In the face of the supernal crown. Now we understand what the peace of the Yud Hey is. The peace of the Teshuvah Ilah, the higher Teshuvah, is not just about accepting God and accepting His commandments. That's the lower levels, which deals with my emotions, which controls what I do. When we talk about the Yud-Hey, we're now talking about a higher level. We're talking about learning Torah understanding, which brings peace amongst the chaotic emotions in me. Even higher than that, study Torah on a level of humility and openness rather than dominance, and I'm now opening up to the infinite creativity of the supernal crown to shine in. That brings a total different level of peace. Thus we have in both the concept of from below above, from above below. Bring the hay up to the vav, accept God as your king, study Torah with understanding, and then we have bring from above to down. That is, bring the commandments into my life. Don't just accept God as my king, but I don't do anything he says. No, I accept his commandments, and it also means get the arrogance of my intellect out of the way so I can understand the infinite creativity power of the supernal crown within wisdom, within the Torah. That is Teshuvah, 4 levels, 2, which is 4. Now, we're going to run very quickly. I'm not going to re-go all 4 stages to understand how it is in the redemption of Mashiach. Rather, they're exactly the same. It's the same process. Exact same process. What is the difference is not in the 4 letters, it's in the name. 2 different names. Now let's go ahead and close it up before we get to the modern day issue that we need to talk about, which is very brief. What I want to share with you is that when you turn to Exodus, Parshas Kisisa, after the story of the golden calf, Moses went up for another 40 days, fasted and did Teshuvah. Then he did the ultimate power of leadership. He gave his life. And if you don't forgive them, erase me from the book. And once he said, erase me from your Torah, he opened up all glory of God. A level of total submissiveness. Moshe Rabbeinu is nothing more than Torah, the servant of God, and he's saying, remove me. I just want to put this in perspective. There's a song of, the good old days, the Bob Dylan guys. And one of the lyrics there is, cancel my subscription to the resurrection. That's not something people are so quick to say. When Moses says, take me out of your book, you know what he just said? Remove me from eternity. For who? For people who bow down to an idol worship? That's who Moses is willing to give up eternity to? This isn't the Titanic where I'll die and I'll go to heaven. He's saying, remove me from heaven, remove me from everything. If you're not going to forgive that idol worshiper, that opened up by God everything. What is one of the most famous verses we have? The 13 attributes of mercy. You sing it on Yom Kippur. Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum V'Chanun. How did it start? Hashem, Hashem, God, God. The Zohar adds on that you should know that even though you're saying 2 times the name God, which in itself is question number 1, question number 2, Psik Taima B'Gavayu. You should know that there's a pause in between those 2 names. It doesn't flow straight. What are we doing here? We're creating a pause within God? Yes. Now let's understand this. The word God, when it's pronounced in Hebrew, Yud Hey Vav Hey, leads to 2 meanings. One says it means from the word Mehave. Mehave means bring into existence. Another one says no. The name Yud Hey Vav Hey really plays upon 3 words. Hoya, Hoive, V'yiyeh. Was, is, and always will be. What's the difference between these 2 meanings? The higher dimension of God's name and the lower dimension of God's name. The lower dimension of God's name means bring into existence. Bring into existence means that it's related to creation. Thus, in this level, God is already descended into be a creator over creation, the universe. When we say that the God means was, is, and always will be, what are we saying? God transcends above the mightiest parameter of creation, which is time. So one talks about the name of God as God has descended into being a creator, and one talks about God's name as God's name is unto himself. Now we understand why there's the pause in between. Once God has stepped out of self to become a creator, that's descended below the pause. When we talk about God as unto himself, then we're talking about before the pause. The bottom line, my friends, are that when you talk about, bottom line is, when you talk about the 4 levels of teshuvah, the name of God, the way it exists in Exodus of Egypt, we're talking about bringing back the name of God, restoring the omnipotent name of God as it is part of creation. Thus, the person who does teshuvah is egocentric. And I don't mean egocentric as in selfish. I don't mean egocentric as in narcissist. But he cannot help but be self-centered. At the end of the day, creation has an identity of a something. Thus, even when you're going through the transparency of accepting God as my king, accepting his commandments as my way of life, studying his Torah through my mind, trying to get my mind out of the way and open up to the infinite creativity, it's still all about I am doing teshuvah. We can't get beyond that. Refer to the Tanya class that we give on Thursday. What do we say? The bet. You can't get before the bet. The one-way mirror of Tzimtzum. God is God because he created me. That's how I started having a God. Thus, it's all about me. Teshuvah even is about me doing teshuvah. What we cannot understand is that when Mashiach comes, there will be a teshuvah where I'm not restoring God's name the way it descended and became my soul. We're talking about God's name as he stands unto himself. Thus, we have the same process of the 4 letters, the 2 which is 4, but over there we're talking about it as God's name as he stands unto himself. That's a total new 4 cups of wine. That's a total new level of emet. We explained teshuvah. Now let's go back to the modern day issue and let's wrap this up. When I make a deal with the devil, I have fractured my soul because I've given part of my soul to him. Let's be practical. When I flirt, or worse than that, to get what I want, I have fractured my soul. When I lie, when I compromise my morals, all as means for an end, I have made a deal with the devil. Ultimately, making a deal with the devil means I have exchanged face-to-face for back-to-back. I have exchanged internal essence for external expression. So yes, and by the way, I had this conversation in the Chabad school for the girls' school. I was brought in to speak to a class of girls, and I told them, there is no doubt in my mind that if any of you beautiful girls went to T-Mobile and just did a little bit of flirting, you're going to walk out with all the accessories to the phone for free. And one of the girls smiled and says, yep, I did that. I said, but what you also did was you left a piece of your soul with the person who gave you all those accessories. Thus question yourself, is that what you want? We know that we can, if we're willing to give away our morals and principles, which we now know means to fracture our soul, to have internal chaos, the loss of inner peace and wholesomeness. We could give one little letter. We have 4 letters. Come on, just give one letter away. And in change I'll have external abundance. Isn't that what we want? There's a price to pay. And the price to pay is that I've given away a piece of my soul. Thus I brought the God within me into exile. Thus I am now within exile. And thus I have no more internal peace. Teshuvah is about buying that soul back. Now, the most important message I want you to take away from everything we're saying is that if you're listening carefully, Teshuvah has nothing what to do with living in the past. Teshuvah is not about living in the shame and the guilt of the past. The word Teshuvah means bring back now the hay. Not cry over yesterday I didn't have my hay. Bring back now the hay. How do you bring back the hay? Very simple. Follow the first 2 steps. God, you are my king. No more my self-will. No more my self-reliance. No more my list of what I think I need to be able to be happy. Number 2, I am willing to live in your ways, not in my ways. There's the American dream and there's the Jewish dream, and they don't necessarily line up. Not until I know that I'm a Jew can I then embrace that I'm an American. Because then my American dream of having a house is about having a kosher house with a Shabbos table, with holy books, with a class going on there, with a beautiful Shabbos table. Then they coincide. But it isn't until I take back my soul from the devil that anything I'll ever have will bring peace. With having my soul back, everything I have is peace. The more money I have, the more I can truly be who I am. But before I take back my soul from the devil, the more I have, the more fractured I am. The more I'm giving essence for expression. Teshuvah. Restore the name of God within ourselves. Bring back the hay. God's my king. Bring back the vav. It's God's way that I will live. Bring back the higher hay. Let me understand God's wisdom and God's view of the world. And bring back the yud. Let me open up to something beyond anything I could ever understand on my own. People, thank you.
Thank you.